So last on deck here, I'd like to introduce Ryan McPherson, our Chief Sustainability Officer here at UB, to offer some closing remarks for this year's summit.
Thank you, panel. That was fantastic. See if I can read with a little bit of light here. If I close this, will that? All right. What a morning and early afternoon. Amazing. I'm still trying to reflect. I think I did more learning there than maybe 3 years of law school. It was the first time that I just listened for quite a while. And I was amazed at a couple of the, all three panels actually. I found myself watching them in between the questions when they were trying to figure out, okay, who wants to chime in next? And I felt my manness trying to jump in to interject, and I was amazed at how much the collegiality and how much of the deference, the things that we think about when we think about how we tackle some of these global challenges. So I wanted to just chat very briefly about that. Before I do that, though, just another round of applause for everyone who's put so much into today's great event, and especially to Kathleen, who's had one heck of a few weeks here and has just done some amazing things with all sorts of challenges, not 1 year, not 2 years, not 3 years, but 4 years worth of this with the larger STEM team. So thank you very much for all of your work. And I'm very well aware that I have the unenviable position of being between you and lunch. So needless to say, I will be brief or I will be trampled probably. In thinking about this, I do a little bit of work with our Western New York Sustainable Business Roundtable, and I was doing a little bit of research and came across this social scientist named David Chambers, who I think it was he was in the early 80s, but he published this landmark study or brought it back of children's drawings. And they were all done during the late 1960s and 70s. And so these teachers asked nearly 5,000 children across the country to draw a scientist. So this is late 60s, early 70s. So features of those doodles included lab coats and beakers and eureka moments, but they all pretty much had abnormally long sideburns, indicating, of course, that a singular theme emerging, that the scientists were all men, right? Not a single boy in the 5,000 child study, and it was about 51% male, 49%, 51% girls, 49% boys. Not a single boy drew a woman scientist, and only 28 of the girls drew a scientist, less than 1%. The good news is that the portrait of scientists in a young person's mind, however, appears to be changing. And even going back as far as 1980, remember these were in the late 60s, early 70s, from the 1980s onward, we now have roughly 3 out of 10 of those scientists are now women, right? Progress being made, but not as fast as we need. For me personally, I have a hard time reconciling that earlier data point, especially having of my 8 supervisors or bosses in my professional life, 7 of them have been women. And when I think about sustainability, the first thing that comes to my mind are people's names like Carlson, Rachel Carlson, right? Are people like Wangari Maathai? Are people like Jane Goodall? Are people like, more locally, Lois Gibbs and Love Canal? Gene McCarthy, our former EPA administrator. Those are the things that we think about. So I think about women in sustainability mainly because I do really believe that they are best positioned to lead, and specifically implementing what others have talked about in terms of the Sustainable Development Goals, these 17 goals that we think will bring us forward to achieve the world that we're looking for. And so the Business Commission and Ellen Weinrab have recently looked at this question on women's leadership, and they believe that it is a quote-unquote secret sauce that could propel us into the new era of sustainability. And so I really like their methodology and their thinking on this, and kind of tweaked it a little bit with some of my own thoughts. But there's three basic reasons that they believe this. So number one, women have the 6 leadership qualities needed to advance sustainability progress. And while I completely agree with, I think it's all 3 panels now have come back to this point that I know Elizabeth personified probably the best, that you think of yourself as a scientist and then a woman, or et cetera. It is true that there are these generalities that show that women are probably better long-term thinkers. They can innovate a little bit more successfully. Collaboration, as I was saying, is key in solving some of these global challenges that we seek, and women are certainly better collaborators. Transparency, environmental management, and of course social inclusiveness. Those 6 traits ideating the leadership piece to advance sustainability progress. In addition, women build relationships, manage complex systems, whether they are dealing with a 2-year-old and 6-year-old or at a CEO level. I actually think it's probably more challenging. Well, I don't know. Sometimes the CEOs act like 2- and 4-year-olds, so we're not quite sure there. But and they deal with moving parts. And to use a term that Kathleen used earlier this morning, they persist until change is created. Something along our resilience that's very important. The second argument that they make is women want to address social and environmental challenges, probably at a higher clip. They show a proclivity to act on these issues. According to New Impact, female CEOs are motivated by purpose and want to have a positive impact on their employees, community, and world, unquote. Net Impact also found that women are more likely to want jobs where they can create impact. So this data all points to the desire that many women have to advance sustainability, and as financial giant Access Chief Sustainability Officer Alice Streeland has mentioned, companies looking to advance their sustainable growth strategies, quote, should just put more women in the management community, period, unquote, which I thought was very apt. And then the last reason, and this is one that I think is not necessarily put out there as much, is there's an economic prize in both the Sustainable Development Goals and women's leadership. The Business Commission's last argument is that in earlier research, the Business Commission found that there's a $12 trillion economic prize for businesses that invest in the SDGs, and likewise, there's a payoff in women's leadership. According to McKinsey, investments in workplace gender equality could add $28 trillion to the global annual GDP by 2025. Why not capture both by investing in women's leadership and the SDGs? So if you're a decision maker in your company, in your organization, at this university, in your old household, it's time to ask yourself a question. Does business or organizations or higher education value the leadership competencies that can help us advance sustainability? And is there a woman with these traits waiting in the wings with a desire to lead? So I thank all of you for coming. We have an awesome spread and an awesome exhibition taking place that will start up in probably just a few minutes, I believe. But thank you very much and have a wonderful afternoon.